Oh, are we good?
Yeah,
All
just
right,
started.
we're good. Just started. Super. All right, so we're calling to order at 1:03 the retirement board meeting for Center County, and we are going to begin with public comment. We see no public here for comment, so we'll look to approve our minutes from our Tuesday, December 29th, 2020 board meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. We always appreciate our controller doing the wonderful job of approving the minutes, so we will thank him as always. And hearing no further discussion on the minutes, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Okay. So we have no correspondence, and we do have old business, which is our RFP investment consultant. If it's okay with you, Jason, can we wait until maybe Steve or Mark might join, and we'll have Emerald go? Is that okay?
Actually, yeah, because that was a mistake. We did that the
Oh, that
last
that,
meeting. I
that
just
shouldn't even
forgot.
be on there, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I'm
yeah,
thinking. All right.
I just caught
Let
that
me take
now.
back everything I just said about you
I,
doing good
I was about
minutes.
to interrupt you when you were saying that and say, well, wait till we get to the next item, but
Okay. All right. We'll go. We're gonna proceed on, and we're going to welcome our friends from Emerald. And I was talking to Jason before the meeting here, Mark, and I was saying there's literally anything you say. You don't have to say anything really. I mean, why? I mean, you should just literally just say, you know, just
Drop the
become a
mic.
mime
Is
or
that it?
something. I mean, what? I mean, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
uh,
yeah.
the floor is yours, but
thank, thank you. I appreciate that. That is wonderful to hear. We love to hear that. But having been in the investment business for 25 years or maybe I know. Hey, Mark.
Hi.
Uh, Having been in this business for as long as I have, I know that you are only as good as what happened yesterday in the markets. So,
fair enough.
so we don't gloat when we're doing well, and we don't freak out when we're not doing so well because we're in it for the long haul. And the good news is, but I do thank you for that, Mike. Thanks so much. Because it's always nice to hear because it is a very difficult business and um, it's ever changing. And this year, although it has been a very good one, both absolute as well as relative, it for everybody has obviously been a very difficult year, and the markets are no different. And we'll get into that in a couple of minutes, but that is no different. So I thank you. You guys remember Damian Gallagher? He joined the team earlier this year. And he's going to be helping me out on the call today like he did last time. So thanks for having us, and thanks for being a long-term client. So having been with us, I think now 20 years, maybe right around there, you know what you get with us. So that's the good news. And I think that's really important in the investment world because over 20 years, we've been through a lot of different markets with you as our clients, as our client. Obviously, the five of you on the board have not been with it all that time, but you do have that history. So that's really important because it helps understand, when we'll do well, when we won't do well. And we'll get into some of those things because fourth quarter was a really interesting one, even though it was strong, positive, a lot of stuff happening there. So we will be, I will take to heart what you said, Mike. We will be brief. We will try to be brief because we do have the good performance. So that's always good. So um, anything anybody wants to cover in particular, just shout it out either now or throughout, and we'll try and delve into it. And if Damien and I can't answer the questions, we'll turn to the portfolio managers to see what they have to say. All right. And I should say Happy New Year. Hope everybody had wonderful holidays, although a little bit different than normal. Still, I think everybody being healthy and safe, it's always good to give thanks to the new year. So let's see.
You're here.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Firm update. No changes from the firm standpoint, we're at about $6 billion in assets under management. No changes in terms of clients and personnel, so all is holding steady there, which is good. No major updates. We're still remote, 95%. We have a few people in each of our offices that are going in either periodically or on a rotating basis. We don't foresee that changing until at least April, and potentially longer, as we've said on these calls before. We're really we reevaluate that constantly. Some good news, I guess, from we have our biotech team, our healthcare team, and they've been following not only the vaccine information and what's happening there, but also following new strains and talking about that. So, nothing has popped out from their standpoint in research, not only in the U.S., but Nishit Trivedi has contacts around the world, as he's worked in India, he's worked in the UK, and has medical contacts. And so he's following around the world. So far, he is not concerned, at least, or happy with the vaccines. Obviously, the percentage that they're covering or protection is well above where even they being our team, thought they would be. So that's a positive. And then the new strains, as of yet, they don't see that should cause a major issue in terms of the vaccines and things. But we'll keep you updated as we get information from them and they get new information. We'll make sure that we pass that along, because it's really interesting to hear kind of what they have to say. So let's see. Other than that, that's it on an update from the firm. I'm going to turn it over to Damien to chat performance. I give him the easy stuff, right?
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. And it's great to see you all. And thanks for having us. To start with the performance, the fourth quarter, as Mark mentioned, was certainly an interesting quarter. There were a lot of events that kind of impacted and had the markets moving quickly. So the portfolio did actually lag the benchmark for the fourth quarter, so giving back some of the outperformance that we had earlier in the year. And this was largely driven by the shift to cyclicals. And that shift really came with the election information coming out, and then also just the vaccine information that was being released with the vaccine approvals. We saw people moving more into value names as opposed to growthier names. And so growth did lag value for the fourth quarter. And surprisingly, also small caps really made a comeback in the fourth quarter, outperforming large caps, and that was really great to see. So as I mentioned, although we did lag in the fourth quarter, we outperformed on the year, and we outperformed by about 1,100 basis points, or 11%. So it was a great year, as you said, Mike and Mark. One other thing that I'll mention on kind of growth versus value is that the Russell 2000 actually had its best quarterly return in the history of the index. So that was a historic event. And although value did outperform in the fourth quarter, growth on the annual basis outperformed value by 30%. So it was sort of a rotation from growth to value, just to give back some of the outperformance like I mentioned.
Excuse me, Damien, could I interrupt you just to talk a bit about rotation and how that works?
Sure.
I apologize if it's an ignorant question. It's just not something that I understand very strongly. I looked it up, but it still wasn't clear.
Sure. So,
thank you.
Yeah, so for the rotation, what happened, and Mark, feel free to jump in if you have something to say. But what happened was, with a lot of people staying at home and some of the more value-driven names, like where people are going to amusement parks or going to banks, and with interest rates actually rising into the fourth quarter, we saw some of the value names kind of pick up traction and continue to be more attractive to investors, which is why there was a rotation there. So Mark, do you want to mention anything else?
No, that's good. Thanks, Damien. And I'll just add, what happens, Colleen, is when you have high growth. So for 2021, most of the economists out there are saying that there's going to be a GDP of 5%, maybe even higher, given all of the stimulus, given the reopening. And when you have this high growth, what happens is it's sort of all sort of rising tide lifts all boats. So some of those stocks that didn't perform as well in a low growth environment, because when the GDP's, let's say, running 1-2%, growth is scarce. So what happens is people go hunting for growth. And a lot of times they look into small cap and small growth. And so they'll pay up for growth because there's not a lot of growth out there in the market. Now, this is, it's a blanket statement. It's not that easy, but that sort of helps explain that. So when you have this high growth rate for the entire economy, then you're going to have people that are going to stray away from the higher growers, and they're going to say, oh, wait a second, let's go look at industrials. Let's look at some basic materials. Banks, interestingly enough, are a cyclical play or a late cyclical play. And the reason being is if economic activity is really strong, the chances that interest rates will be going up increases. If interest rates go up, that means the spread that banks make on what they lend and what they have as deposits goes up. So that's why banks tend to be a cyclical play. So that's kind of what we have seen. And Colleen, I will say this, to me, it seems, when the PMs explain this to me, it kind of seems counterintuitive. And I think, well, wait, growth's high. Why wouldn't people be looking more towards growth? But it's because there's an abundance of high growers then when the market's doing well. Does that help? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Trying not to interrupt. So what I'm hearing is basically as the market shifts, you've got investment money dropping out of some sectors and moving into other sectors, and that's the rotation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right.
So that's what they mean by that rotation. Yeah. And it's not November. Damien, the one thing before we jump off of page 11 I want to point out is page 11, it's as of December, not September on the performance. I apologize for that. We missed that when Damien and I were looking at the review sheet there. But it is through the end of the year. We just stated it through September. But Damien, I'm going to jump into the sector stuff because Colleen's question was a really good segue into what I was going to talk about next. Although November was a really violent move in terms of shifting to cyclicals and value, December came back a little bit. It typically, it depends on how long that shift's going to be. Since the financial crisis, the shift to value or cyclical names, the duration of this has been very short. It's typically been 4 months on average, which is unusual. Typically, you have a longer value versus growth cycle. We don't know what it's going to be like, obviously, going forward, but that's something to keep in mind. And then the shift, it may just be a relative outperformance, right? It's not that the other sectors don't do well. It's just that some of those cyclicals, banks, financials, industrials, they're going to do better. And we'll see that as we get into some of the sector stuff. Page 16 is just hitting on some of the points Damien mentioned. Q4, we saw small cap finally outperform large cap for the year in that quarter. But for the year, large cap still did better and value over growth in fourth quarter. For the year, growth still was outperforming value, but we talked about that shift being pretty sharp. Page 18, now we get into these sectors to touch on a little bit about what we were talking about. Page 18, if you look at financials, basic materials, and even energy, which was up huge, 64%. So you see kind of that shift. They were 3 out of the 4 highest earning or best performing sectors. So you can see that kind of cyclical shift in the fourth quarter. year over year for the full year, you're still seeing technology, healthcare, telecommunications being strong. And one thing I wanted to point out about healthcare that is really interesting, biotech surprisingly hasn't done as well in 2020. And you would think, wait, why is that with the virus and vaccines and everything? The vaccines are large cap. Biotech tends to be more small cap. But the other thing that's been a headwind is they've had a really hard time getting people into trials because of COVID, right? So with all the shutdowns, with people not going places, people being afraid to, be in hospital environments or those types of environments. So therefore, it's been hard to get folks in trials. Therefore, things have been delayed. So it's kind of counterintuitive. I wouldn't have thought that. And then the second thing is medical devices, medical surgical equipment, medical equipment. Because of COVID, you've had surgeries be delayed. So those companies have typically, so the healthcare, within healthcare, there's been interesting shifts in leaders. And one of the things Joe Garner, one of the PMs on your portfolio, talks about that might be different is some sectors will actually act like cyclicals, those two that I just mentioned, because as we reopen, they're going to start to be a focus of folks. So it's not only the traditional cyclicals that we look at, but also sort of ones that you wouldn't expect. And I'm going to turn it back over to Damien to talk about some of the names. But when I wrap it up on the sectors, I'll talk about what the PMs are doing to try to take advantage of the changing sort of into cyclicals in value.
Thanks, Mark. So just going to page 20 on the contributors, looking at some of these names here. Some of them are more familiar names that we see regularly on the contributors to return. Twist is one, and Freshpet is one that we've held for a while. Probably familiar with those from prior meetings. An interesting one that kind of ties in with what Mark was talking about is Crown Holdings, which is at the top of the list. And Crown is actually a manufacturer of containers, so steel, aluminum bottles and containers. Are a local Pennsylvania company. And they did well because of that shift into industrials, which is why we see them on this list today. A couple of other names I thought were interesting that I just point out were Rapid7 and Varonis, which are both cybersecurity companies. With everyone still working from home, we've seen an uptick in kind of attempts at cyber attacks on institutions, and we saw that in the news. And really that's benefited these companies by kind of widening their base and allowing them to kind of grow their businesses by just providing more services on the cybersecurity front. Unless anyone has any questions on other contributors, I'll move over to the detractors page. So looking at the next page on the top detractors, the top two names on here, Meritage and Palomar, are both involved in real estate, which did really well through the whole year. In the third quarter, with rising rates, as Mark mentioned, we saw kind of a stagnation in the real estate market. So these companies didn't really underperform. They really had flat performance on the year, and because of that, or in the quarter, and because of that, is why they're in the detractors. Which is kind of the case for a couple of other names on this list as well. I know Dick's Sporting Goods had a really great first few quarters in the year. And that was given their participation in kind of the do things outside. People were buying camping equipment and just trying to do things, stay active outdoors. So Dick's had a really great first 3 quarters in the year and kind of just stayed flat in the fourth quarter, but has actually since really rebounded going into the first quarter of this year. And I know a couple of names that we had looked at and then we're watching are Tabula Rasa. We've mentioned that before, is something that we're monitoring and considering maintaining that in the portfolio or not. And another is eHealth as well. So do you have any questions about any of the detractors on the list? All right. So.
Great. Thanks, Damien. Anything else you wanted to cover before I jump into sectors?
No, So I was going to say, just Mark, if you take it over from here and jump into the sector performance.
Awesome. All right. So if we take a look, I just want to show you two more things, and then we will let you go or fire away with questions. Page 25. If you take a look at page 25, that's the sector allocation. And a couple of things. So how do we, kind of following on Colleen's question, and Colleen, I couldn't have planted that question any better, so thank you. That was great. That sort of led into every comment I've had since. So we've been leaning into the cyclicals. So one of the things a couple of things that PMs talk about. First of all, it's when you have that violent shift like you had in November, it's really hard to adjust the portfolio that quickly. On top of that, we're not, right? You guys know we're not top down, we're bottoms up. We are truly looking for companies on a one-by-one basis. And we're not high turnover traders. So it's not like we're moving in and out of positions every week, every other week, every day. So that's not what we do. We're very much in terms of long term. Our holdings could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years where we're holding on to them. I mean, Chegg's a great example. I think we held that for 7 or 8 years. So with that, we're not going to make really aggressive changes. However, they are going to look to see how do we position the portfolio going forward to see what the market's going to be looking at. Very similar to when we were in the beginning of COVID, you saw them shift the portfolio to who's going to benefit from stay at home. The security names, some of those were new back then. Who's going to benefit from the stay at home? And then as the reopenings happen throughout the summer, who's going to benefit more through there? We'll never buy a stock for a very short term gain or pop. We're always going to have to follow our process, but we do take into effect what's happening out there. And so they were leaning in the fourth quarter, leaning into industrials, financials, staples, things that we talked about as more cyclical type of areas. Consumer and technology, pretty much staying fairly general where we were, but making changes within those sectors. So they might, as I said, they might look to adjust the portfolio or the sector within technology or the consumer area, depending on what they think's happening, over the next 12 months and what may be happening with reopenings and things that might be of more interest in the cyclical and a little bit more value oriented. We are, by nature, we're a growth manager. So, we're always going to be looking more for those companies that are going to be long-term growers. And we believe that over that long haul, that's where people in the small cap world will focus their attention. The last page I'll point out is page 26. This is our top 10. And the main thing I wanted to point out here was just you can see out of the top 10, there are 5 out of the 10 that are in what we talked about as being sort of cyclical areas. Again, they've got to have long-term growth prospects. So it's not just that we're trying to catch a short-term move in the market. So that I think is important, but Crown Holdings, Freshpet, Utz, MSA Safety, and Kratos Defense, all 5 of those are in those areas, but still a good smattering across. You guys know, having followed us, that we have a pretty good diversification in terms of not only the portfolio, but our top 10. We're never going to make a huge sector bet. We're never going to make a huge stock bet. And that's kind of what the PMs have stuck to here. And I think that's it. We, as always, we appreciate your business. We thank you for having faith in us to manage your money. We take it incredibly seriously, and we know that Mike's comments in the beginning aside, we know that we have to earn your business. Even when we do well, we got to start the next day at 0. Ken always says, every day I come in, I'm starting over from 0, and I got to beat that market today. So we do know that we have to earn it, and we appreciate it. And fourth quarter was a good example. Even though we underperformed, hopefully from our conversations, you get and you understand why we're underperforming, and it makes sense to you as well, right? I hope never do I come to a meeting like this and you guys sort of shake your heads and go, that doesn't make any sense. I think we don't try and make it more complicated than it is. So thank you. The last thing I will say is we do have our Groundhog Day conference this year. It's February 4th. You guys probably got an email about it. And the good news is you don't have to come to Philadelphia in February because it's all virtual. So feel free, please, even if you don't know if you're going to make it or you think you might only catch a session or two, hop in for what's of interest and then go on your day. We'd love to have you to sign up, and it gives you an opportunity to hear some of the other folks in our firm and on the investment team. And there's some really interesting topics and companies that'll be talking. So with that, I will stop talking and say thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you.
Damien and Mark, we appreciate you being here. Comments, feedback. I think the big thing is for us, the fourth quarter is always it's the most important report we get because it allows us to know a little bit about what our ADC is going to look like for the next year. And for all signs, it looks like we're going to be experiencing a little bit of a reduction with our ADC. And I do appreciate you, Mark, saying that you're humble in the successes and want to do better in the future, obviously. But I think in the times that we're living in, with the budget constraints we appreciate more than ever the fact that this year was I don't know if it was the firm's largest delta, but it was in our history with you, it was the largest delta between the benchmark and your performance. It was 11%. I think a previous year you might have had about a 10% delta between them, but that's huge. I mean, in the last 21 years we've been with you, and especially within the last 15 years or so that we've been within this type of investment strategy, having the largest delta and beating the benchmark is something to recognize, at least. Maybe not, if you don't want to celebrate it, that's fine, but I think recognize and appreciate. So I think that's important to do. And but again, like you said, we're interested in seeing what's happening this year and what's going to happen as we go have many changes this year. But no, we appreciate you being with us, and we absolutely will. I think the fact it's virtual this year, we'll definitely try to be there and catch a few sessions and join everybody with that. But no, again, my thanks and congratulations to the team. And we'll see if there's any other thoughts or comments from any other members at this time. Turn the floor over to anybody else who'd like to offer any words.
Mark Higgins, I just wanted to say great job, and also the information's well presented and easy to follow. Always appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like to echo everyone else, though. But yeah, thank you for on the quarter reporting to us. So turning that around in a quick time. I know it's always a time constraint for you, so I don't know that all the other board members necessarily know how tight of a time turnaround that is for you, but I do appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Great, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to have you with us today. We look forward to seeing you virtually, most likely, as we report the first quarter coming into the next several months here. And if you need anything else let us know, gentlemen. But Happy New Year to you both, and we look forward to talking with you in the future. Want to see if there's any other items to come before the retirement board. If there are none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. But any other topics or comments we'd like to make before we end the meeting? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Take care, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.